One of the most important basic scripting concepts is centered around variables. Variables are containers for data, basically like an envelope. You can put any type of data you want in there, for example a string or a number, etc. Now variables are single compartment containers, that is to say they contain one piece of data. You can't put multi-layered data or several pieces of different data inside a variable. Okay, so an example of a variable might be if you say name equals John or x equals 5. So this is basically sort of similar to what we learned in school when they would say a equals 5, what is a times 2, and you would answer 10. Okay, let's take a look at some examples of variables, some working examples. Here in Setup Factory, I'm going in the Action section here on the left, and I'm clicking in the On Startup link, and that brings up my Actions editor here. We can go ahead and take a look at some different examples of actions. What I'm going to do first is apply an application exit action here so that whenever our examples are finished executing, the application will exit. Alright, let's take a look at a simple example of assigning a variable. Let's say x equals 5, and then let's go ahead and bring up a dialog message box that's going to give us our value of x. Okay, so in this dialog message, the title I'm going to type in is going to be value, and then I'm going to put in the second area here just the name of our variable, x. Okay, so I'm referring to that variable, which is basically a symbolic relation to that value that we've assigned to it. Let's press OK. I'm going to go ahead and build this really quick, and we'll just take a look at the example file. Let's go ahead and run that, and as you can see here, we get the value 5. Okay, so we've called that value back simply by referring to the variable name, right? Let's take a look at what we did again. We took a variable name, x, and we assigned it a value, 5. Then, when we needed it in an action, namely the dialog message action, we simply referred to the variable name, and we got the value. Okay, so that's what variables are. They're symbolic associations between names and values. Okay, let's try this again with something a little more complicated. Let's add a second variable to our script here. X equals 5, y equals 10. Now let's go ahead and put in here x times y instead of just x. So we've got these two variable assignments, and now we've got an actual equation. We've used the multiplication operator to create some interaction between our variables. Let's go ahead and run that. So I'll build it, and then I'll run our resulting file here. As you can see, we get the value 50 because that's 5 times 10. Our variables have interacted with each other, and we've created basically a meaningful association there. Okay, so let's go ahead and try some strings out. So I'm going to remove our values here, and I'm going to set up a string value here. So I'm going to say first name equals John. Alright, let's go ahead and see how that works. We're going to type first name into the dialog message action, and I'm going to go ahead and run that. Okay, so as predicted, we got the value John. We referred to it with its name, first name. So we referred to that variable label, and we got the value. Alright, now let's try and join up some string variables together into a longer string, and we'll do that by assigning a second variable name here, last name, and we'll say Smith. And then in the dialog message action, we're going to go ahead and add another type of operator here, a concatenation operator. That's 2 periods, and we'll put a space in between those 2 words. We'll go ahead and concatenate on that last name. So we're sort of joining together the first name, the space in between the quotation marks, and the last name. And let's see what that gives us. Here we see it attaches the values together, and we get the display value John Smith. Okay, so that's some interaction with variables. That's an introduction to variables. That's how we do things. We just assign these values to those labels, and then we can go ahead and use those throughout our scripts. So it's quite simple concept, but you can actually get some pretty profound interactivity out of this when you learn how to manipulate it and make it work for the purposes of your scripts. Okay, the final thing that we're going to take a look at here is reassigning one of these values. One of the nice things about variables is that you can just reassign a value to that variable anytime you want. So for example here, if I change first name to Susan, after I've already assigned it the value John, let's see what happens. Go ahead and run that. And you can see here that it actually reassigned the value. So we got Susan Smith instead of John Smith. So variables are very, very easy to work with. As you can see here, they're super simple to type and use inside your scripts. And it's basically just that concept of you're taking a container, and that's the variable. You're putting a label on the outside. In this case, an example of one of the labels would have been first name. And then you're putting something inside that container. In this case, the value Susan. Okay, so that's what a variable is. It's a container in which we can put values. Okay, let's go ahead and go on to the next video lesson. We're going to work through all these core concepts of scripting, and hopefully by the time we've gone through these few chapters on scripting, we'll all have worked out a really good understanding of how these basics work together to create high-level interactivity within our scripts.